Welcome to another edition of the 49er GoldCast.
San Francisco, are you ready? Bam, boom, bing. I'm your host, Rudy Solis III, and with me is my brother, my co-host,
Raymond Solis the first, baby.
and our esteemed co-host,
Old Man Davis.
Boom, boom, boom. Here we go, guys. It is the finally 49er GoldCast without the team in season. I'm really excited. I'm really glad that we're going to get back to football here. And we've got a pretty good show. A lot of heat. Would you guys say that? A lot of heat last couple of weeks while we were gone?
Definitely. I think fans are going to be happy about this one because we are certainly, as we draw closer to the season, we're going to be taking a more Niner-centric approach with our topics this week.
Agreed.
A lot of heat. It's cold sometimes. The weather then comes up. It's summertime, so maybe too close to the barbecue pit.
Definitely. All right, here we go. So our opening segment today focuses on the upcoming preseason. Now, gents, we've heard this time and time again that preseason doesn't matter.
Oh, it doesn't matter. It's just preseason. Oh, it doesn't matter. It's just all the kids, blah, 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 all the rookies, blah, 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 NFL draft, blah, blah, blah.
Give me a beer.
But here's the thing, okay? We've heard this from everybody, analysts, fans, journalists, everyone. But let me take you back to the start of last year's preseason. And if you remember, right from the onset, from the very first two games, we saw a variety of offensive woes from our starters. Even though they only were playing, real small sample of snaps, we saw issues with the offensive line. We saw Cap struggling in the pocket. And we also saw an offense that really struggled to score TDs. I believe I think they only scored 3 points in the first 8 quarters.
Yeah, it was pretty bad coming out the gate.
And again, everyone's saying, well, it's just preseason. But the fact remains that every single issue we saw highlighted in the preseason with the offense ended up carrying through the rest of the season.
And normally it's not like that either.
No, but with that in mind, the GoldCast here is each of us have developed and are presenting our 5 burning questions that we would like to see answered, at least to some extent, in the preseason. Raymond, we're going to start with you.
So going in descending order, my 5th question is number 5. Will Navarro Bowman, Eric Reed, Anton Bethea, Aldon Smith, and Darnell Dockett be enough to keep the defense on par with the rest of the NFC West and carry the supporting cast, most of which are either rookies or second-year men?
Now, I have a question for you, though. Do you feel like you're going to get some idea of that during the preseason? Do you feel like we'll be able to see that a little bit?
I think to a very small degree because, again, we're talking preseason. And I think Navarro Bowman is going to be watched as he goes into live action because he's a key asset for the Niners right now. He's their best defensive asset if he can return back to form. There is a lot on Aldon Smith, too, to really step up this year. And I know Charles Haley independently reached out to him to help him and mentor him because he's had a really quiet season, his best off season in his pro career. A Pro Bowl off season for Aldon Smith. Very proud of him, staying out of trouble.
Not even a misdemeanor.
Yes, exactly.
No jaywalking.
You're going to get a snippet. You just in preseason, you're just going to have to pay attention to the first and second series as the preseason goes along because that's when all the starters are in there. You might see some of the other starters like maybe Aldon Smith or Aaron Lynch. They might get a few more snaps than normal just to get them into rhythm. And they're younger, so they can take it. But moving on, I will go to number 4, will Hyde answer the call? And we kind of answered this in the last episode, but that was more geared towards the regular season. I think in the preseason, we're also going to see him definitely getting into rhythm because he said that the one thing he learned during his rookie campaign was to be patient. And that was something that a lot of analysts, us included, kind of mentioned as something that he needs to work on and keep in mind coming into this season. I'm sure he got a heavy dose of that knowledge from Frank Gore, of course, because that's Frank Gore's bread and butter. That's how he operates once the ball is snapped. So I think we're definitely going to see that too. He's going to get some more snaps too because we want him to be ready. We also want everyone else, whether that's Mike Davis, Reggie Bush, all those guys are going to be in rhythm too. So I'd like to see how that whole cast really comes together to form the new revamped running team. Moving on, number 3, with the departure of the corners that helped lead the NFL in picks last season, will a healthy Tremaine Brock, Jimmy Ward, and second-year man Dante Johnson perform to par? Now, we all know that Eric Reed and Anton Bethea are former Pro Bowlers. There's no question that they're going to definitely be ready to play and do their job. But the question is, we're once again supplied with a new cast of corners. Will they, with the exception of Tremaine Brock, who was actually injured last year? Now, I believe they can and will. Brock was injured last year, and he's in position to stack on his breakout year in 2013 when he had 13 pass deflections and 5 picks. And Dante Johnson's more of a bigger corner who showed flashes of potential in his limited play last year. But if his pick 6 against St. Louis was any indication, then this kid can be something special this year. So moving on, number 2, will the newly vamped offensive line perform better than last year's? This one's number 2. I almost made it my number 1 because it was a pretty strong question and it's been something on my mind. And to me, I think there's only improvements to see because once again, the overarching theme this year is health, and everyone is healthy this year. And yes, Anthony Davis and Mike Iupati will be missed, but Joe Staley and Alex Boone are still there, and they can easily carry the mantle, not to mention a healthy Daniel Kilgore and second-year man Marcus Martin, who will fill the center and guard positions, respectively. But the big anticipation is coming from Brandon Thomas, who is projected to make an instant impact at guard. And with the zone blocking to help disguise offensive plays, I think it'll be harder to predict what's coming next, which will make sacks a harder stat to come by this year. And number 1, overall burning question in my mind, will Colin Kaepernick's new weapons and off-season refinement place him in the elite quarterback conversation?
That's the big one, right?
That's kind of a more overall question. It's less geared towards preseason, more just like what to expect. I think absolutely. And I think the fact that he learned from one of the best pocket passers of his time in Kurt Warner, I think it will certainly yield results on the field. I think Torrey Smith will give Cap those moments where he can utilize his cannon. And with Jeep Chris, he can bring back Vernon Davis plays over the middle to complement Bolden's consistent effort and the incorporation of Reggie Bush and Hyde for touch passing in the flats. I think that makes for a really dynamic and versatile offense, and I think Cap is ready to take advantage of that. And I dare somebody to try to prove otherwise.
I'm not going to dare you at all on that one.
Old man Davis, what are your 5 burning questions going into the preseason?
These questions are burning in my underwear right now, okay?
Ouch.
How dominant and healthy can the offensive line be in getting Colin Kaepernick the protection he needs and the running backs the open lanes they need? All right? I'm going to ask these 5 questions, and I don't want any answers from them until the season starts. And only then will I revisit it. I don't have to give you any explanation as to how I came up with these burning questions. They just all of a sudden appeared. I just had a feeling. I woke up and I go, what is that burning in my pants? 5 questions. Number 4, how does the 49ers offense plan to keep up with the West defense? That includes Arizona, Seattle, and St. Louis. All strong, solid defenses last season that continue to be a promise into this season. And although they have several key players moving up in rank and acquired some free agent signings in the offseason, we'll have to see if those open positions will be filled adequate. Number 3, what weapons can Cap look forward to using? Anquan Bolden is high in mileage at this point of the relationship. You have Bruce Ellington and Quentin Patton, players still in development, and the signing of Torrey Smith from the Ravens is a great addition to the receiver corps. However, we'll have to see that rhythm. I want to see if Jerome Simpson can be that number 3, because if he can't, the wide receiver corps will not be the problem in this upcoming season's 49ers transition. Number 2, what can we expect from Sourdough Sam's performance as a mascot? Last season, he was gifted with a new pair of Levi jeans. New pair. And it makes sense with the opening of Levi Stadium. But this season, Sam, what are you going to do for us?
I think everyone wants to know what Sourdough Sam.
What have you done for me lately?
Yeah.
What have you done for me lately? I'm tired of the stale sourdough. Number 1. Back to number 3. Which player will be missed the most? With the retirements and the off seasons moving on from the 49ers, you have players like Justin Smith, Patrick Willis, Mike Iupati, and Frank Gore, all gone. So who will step up, and how well will they step up, not to be the player that they filled in the role for, but to be the player that they know how to be, which is themselves, and play 49er football. Can you do it? We'll have to see. Number 1, as the coaching staff on both offense and defense convince the players a new era of football begins with this upcoming season. It's obvious to everyone, so let's lay it on the table. Let's lay the cards on the table and call it what it is. New players, new vacancies. Nearly everything is up for grabs. This is not Jim Harbaugh football. This is Jim Tomsula football. Boom.
Boom, baby.
And he doesn't play around. Ain't that right, Jimmy Tomsula? Not Harbaugh. And that's my burning questions. I will not know until the season begins.
Well, we will revisit those. So now it's my turn for my 5 burning questions. So,
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Can you dig it?
mine, I'm going to go from most important down to the least. My very first one, I like your guys' questions. Actually, they're great. First of all, I think some of the questions are also, pointed more towards the greater NFL season ahead of us. But I think all are very relevant, and I definitely think we'll see shades of those beginning in the preseason. My questions are a little bit more streamed down to specifically the next month of football. And number 1, same as yours, Raymond, Cap's throwing mechanics in the pocket. I want to see what, if any, changes have been retained from Kurt Warner's quarterback camp. We have to remember that camp was only 6 weeks. I wish it was a year, but it was only 6 weeks. Yeah. That's a really short amount of time to try and fix long-established problems that have existed throughout, probably dating all the way back to his college career. So I want to see what, if anything, has been retained. I want to see, is there any patience in the pocket? What does his step back look like? How's the throw look like? How's his touch look like? All the things that were addressed in the Kurt Warner interview that we'll be discussing later on. I want to see what, if anything, has been retained. And you're going to see that in the very first 4 snaps. You're going to see something. So I think that's number 1 on my list, primarily because he is the face of the franchise. He is the face of the offense. And without him, we are not going anywhere. Number 2, also the same exact question, coincidentally, that you had, Raymond. How has the offensive line adapted to the zone blocking scheme? Okay, the Harbaugh coaching staff was committed to a gap power blocking scheme. It was more man-to-man. One of the problems that we had with that specific blocking style is that it started to really unravel once we started getting injuries to the starters. And the guys stepping up didn't have the size or the experience or the wherewithal to continue the success of the power blocking scheme. So now what Tomsula and his coaches have installed, as we all know, is a zone blocking scheme, which Raymond, you were covering in depth when you were discussing it. I just want to see how it looks. I want to see how players from last year are adapting to it. That's my big second burning question. Number 3, what impact, if any, is delivered by the incoming 2015 rookie draft class? In particular, our first 3 draft picks, all on the defense. Eric Armstead, defensive lineman from Oregon. Jaquise Tart, safety from Samford. And Eli Harold, outside linebacker from Virginia. I want to see what kind of impact they can deliver in the preseason. I want to see how they handle snaps. I want to see how they handle the speed of the NFL. I just want to see what they do. Trent Baalke, say what you will about his offensive picks. His defensive picks have usually been very strong and on the money outside of that horrific 2012 class. So I want to see what these guys do, and I'm hoping that we get some immediate impact because you definitely trust Baalke when it comes to defense, and I was very excited about these picks, and I want to see what they can do. Number 4, this kind of harkens back to question number 2. Will we see any of the traditional power running schemes that made us so successful during the Jim Harbaugh era?
I definitely think so.
Right?
They said they weren't going to abandon it, and that they didn't want to bring it. They didn't want to fix what wasn't broken.
Exactly. So I want to see what has stayed. I want to see that mixed in with the zone blocking scheme. I'm just really curious. Most of my questions outside of number 3 are really about the offense. I know that given all of the retirements, I should be more concerned about the defense, but I felt like the defense had a lot of depth, and I feel like there was a lot there's a lot of good things about the defense. And I actually, crazy as it sounds, I trust Jim Tomsula a lot more in his ability to lead the defense. I thought he should have been the defensive coordinator, but I digress. That's a conversation that we've beat to death. But, so I really want to see how the traditional power run schemes work in conjunction with the zone blocking schemes. And we're not going to see a huge sample of it, I'm sure, but I want to see something. And last, and maybe this is the most important one, will Jim Tomsula completely abandon the use of khaki pants? You look at all of our successful coaches, Bill Walsh, George Seifert, Jim Harbaugh. Those are the three most successful ones, the only ones ever to get us to the big dance. All three men wore khaki pants. Will Jim Tomsula carry on the tradition, the winning tradition that has been passed from one successful 49er coach to another, the pants? Or will he stay with, like, I don't know, sweats or something, the black sweats that I see him wear? Personally, I think he should go to the khaki pants. What do you guys think?
Sourdough Sam thinks maybe he should use Levi's 101 jeans.
Thank you, Sourdough Sam. That would be fitting for the stadium. I think he should keep the warm-up suit.
Yeah, you like the warm-up suit?
I like the warm-up
Now,
suit.
the warm-up suit looks great. It looked great on me. I think it'll look even better on him, knowing that I'm not around as much.
All right, those are our 5 burning questions going into preseason. I'll tell you what, I really can't wait. This can't come fast enough for these games to start. I think this will be another closely watched preseason for me. How about you guys?
You guys get to the playoffs, he should move from the warm-up suit to the velour.
The first male NFL coach to wear a velour suit.
I'd pay $1 for that.
Yep. All right, gentlemen. So reaction time. We got a lot of reactions coming up, guys. Our next segment focuses on the interview that radio host Chad, Joe, and Lorenzo of 95.7 The Game had with Kurt Warner. As widely reported, Colin Kaepernick spent 6 weeks of his offseason at Kurt Warner's quarterback camp. Try saying that 5 times fast. 95.7 The Game caught up with Kurt and asked him about the progress Cap made during the camp. It's now time for us to deliver our thoughts on that interview. Old man Davis, we're going to start with your reaction to Kurt Warner's interview on 95.7 The Game.
I knew then, just as I know now, about number 7 and what he was and what he may still continue to be until we see him put those cleats on, grab that football under the center's ass, and throw the ball.
That's technically where it is, right?
What is the difference between a quarterback versus an athlete for number 7? When do we get to see the team's leader versus an athlete that is a force to be reckoned? He's shown improvement, as we heard Kurt's camp from The Game. All right, now he needs to perform on center stage, and we won't see that in training camp. However, like I've said before, when the season starts, that's when it counts. I think what Kurt's found is exactly to no surprise for me. I mean, creating an offense that's custom to Cap's game, pulling back on some of the options that doesn't overwhelm that little brain of his, is what's key in him adjusting to a pocket passer style that should be his game. How long is it going to take? That is my question. How long is it going to take, Kurt? You don't know. I know. And it's going to take more than the 2016 season. We have 17 weeks. 16 games, 3 other teams in the NFC West, and the most deflated, depleted number 1 defense to depend on getting him the ball back to figure this all out. That's my reaction, and I'm going to bed.
On 49 ERS, the GoldCast. Raymond, your reactions to Kurt Warner's interview.
I like how he had a lot of positive things to say about Cap and that he did see improvement and that he was, even when he was put into some more lighthearted situations like the flag football charity event. I think the big factor that stands out to me was Warner's focus with Cap on the little things, because that's really the part of his game that's missing. And, you know, being able to make the throws that are supposed to be made. And like Kurt said, great quarterbacks, aside from those making those little throws, will be able to extend plays with great athleticism and great instincts. And the thing is, Cap has that already. He has that. That's part of his raw talent skill set. And we've seen him do it when the pocket collapses and he has to scramble outside and he launches a ball for 50-plus yards. And then we see him in other scenarios when we see him in the same situation taking off for a 90-yard marathon score. So I'm curious to see how well he can increase the percentage of the plays that are supposed to be made, because we know that at least once, maybe even twice a game, he's going to make an extraordinary play that looks like it's going to break down and be nothing, and he's going to turn it into something with his pure talent, his pure raw given talent. So the question is, what is he doing outside of Kurt's camp now in OTAs and all that's in off-season workouts and practicing to get ready to make the plays that he's supposed to be making, to make, as Kurt put very nicely, to make those layup plays. Mm-hmm. You know, I want to see that, because I think he's ready to do it, and I think he's got the tools to do it. So now it's just time to see him, you know, put his money where our mouths are, because we're the ones that are really talking about these bets. But so that to me is how I feel about it. I think he's going to answer the call, but that's, to me, it's like the little things. You're going to make the little things count when they're supposed to count.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was probably the thing I walked away with the most.
You want to say that one more time?
Yeah. I agree. I agree 100%. So let me chime in on this. Again, Raymond Solis the first. I agree with you. So I took a lot of notes from the entire interview. I took a lot of notes. And actually, I'm going to ask you guys some questions once I get through some of my reaction. But I highlighted the pieces that really stood out to me. I mean, I thought the whole interview was fantastic. But number one, like you said, the layups, getting more comfortable with the easy throws, the basics. He was talking about how the ability of successful quarterbacks is to make sure that all of the easy passes get made. And those were the ones that they really focused on. And I thought that was huge. And getting him more comfortable in going through his reads, creating a little bit more patience in the pocket. And he was talking about how it wasn't even about necessarily, you know, sitting in the pocket the way Peyton Manning or Tom Brady do, but just getting 2 to 3 more seconds in there, just a couple more steps in there. Nothing too huge, but just a little bit more, and just giving him that much more time to make a play happen within the pocket. And I like the easy progression it sounded like they were going through to get him more familiarized with the pocket. I thought the next big thing that really stood out for me during the interview was, can Cap take the lessons back to the field in a live football situation? Again, and that was something I wanted to see. That's my number one question from the last segment. They were talking about performance over wins. What is going to be successful for Cap? And the questions he was throwing at us: did he make the throws that needed to be made? Can he make plays? How efficient can he be? That was really important, and that really stood out to me. Again, kind of coming back to what we were saying in the first one about, you know, the layups, performance over wins. That really stood out. And then the last thing that really stood out was he had mentioned that, and I'm not sure if there was a conversation between Jim Tomsula and Kurt Warner. I feel like there may have been, but it sounded like what they were really trying to do this season, which he touched on, was allowing Kaepernick to expand his knowledge versus necessarily having to find the perfect play right there on the field, which is, you know, I think that's harkening back a little bit to the pressure and the amount of responsibility that was placed on Cap's shoulders last year, Greg Roman and Jim Harbaugh. So those are the things that really stood out to me. Now, I have a couple questions for you guys. I'm going to start with this one, and I want both of you to answer this.
No.
Well, and there's Old Man Davis's answer. How impactful can 6 weeks really be? I believe that Colin Kaepernick has the drive. And like even he said, it was one of the very first things Kurt Warner said. He wants to be great. And drive and motivation, more often than not, we see time and time again, can propel an athlete beyond the base level talent that he was born with or that he has developed over years. Drive can really push an athlete to go far beyond anyone's expectations. Raymond, I want to hear your opinion first.
I think a lot of it depends on the type of player. I mean, one of the things that Cap noticed was that all the other guys that are at the top echelon of the quarterback position in the NFL, such as Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, all did independent off-season workouts with special coaches and trainers during the off-season. And that was something he said, okay, and now he's modeling success. The guys who have made it do these extra things in the off-season to get better and stay at the top of their game. So if I want to be that way, I've got to start doing the same thing. But I think I'm going to also lean on some of the points that Old Man Davis said for a change, because I don't think it's going to be a night and day switch. I think it's going to take him time to get used to it. And as the season goes on, I think he's going to get progressively better at some of those little things that he's been working on, because the 6-week training is like night and day from a live game scenario.
Yeah.
He's going to get the opportunity in preseason to rhythmize it. But then in the regular season, he's going to have to utilize all that rhythm establishment and all the knowledge he's stored up in his head and in his body, and now he's going to have to put it all together. And the question is, how well is he going to put it all together? We all know he has the drive. We know he has the motivation. We know he has the tool set to step outside of the conventional quarterback demand and make amazing things happen. So the question is, can he do the little things too? I think he can. However, I think it's going to be at least a season or two before we see all that stuff really come to fruition and him start to really look like that passer that can do the little things and do the extraordinary things on a more balanced scale. You know, Steve Young didn't become Steve Young overnight. It took him time to get over some of those habits he had.
Seasons.
And so, yeah, it did take seasons for him. But we live in a faster league now too. So I think that will bode in favor of Cap's corner, because he's going to have to learn this fast too. So, and I think he can do it.
Well, it's a make or break year for him. Old Man Davis, I know you did touch on it when you were speaking, but I'd like to hear, how do you feel about when you hear 6 weeks Colin Kaepernick quarterback camp? What do you think about that amount of time?
First off,
Ray,
please don't send all the compliments at once.
Old Man Davis said. Old Man Davis said. Old Man Davis said.
Okay, thank you. I know I contribute a lot here, and I don't get the credit due me.
There's reasons for that.
But in time, you will see how important it is for you to recognize and respect me here on the GoldCast. I did, and I still do have an opinion about number 7, even if it's 10 minutes later. This man, this player, this athlete has so much potential, so much knowledge of himself as an athlete. 6 weeks. What are we talking about here?
Practice.
What are we talking about here?
Practice.
All we're talking about is practice. 6 weeks. Okay? I'm going to give you a little breakdown as to what 6 weeks means to me. Old Man Davis. Rocky Balboa trained in Russia against Ivan Drago, either more or less than 6 weeks. And he defeated Russia on their home turf. Does that say anything about training? Maybe it does. Maybe 49ers are to America or what Rocky Balboa is to Colin Kaepernick. Maybe he needs to see what he's learned and just fast forward like a movie does to his success. Military training. All right. You sign up for the Navy. It's 8 weeks basic training. The Marine Corps, 12 weeks basic training, followed by infantry or combat training. The Coast Guard, 8 weeks. And this is just basic training, folks. This is not Operation Hoopmanzada, okay? This is just 6 weeks of layups. So, if I left a bad taste in your mouth, we'll go rinse it out, because we're going for 15 rounds. And it's going to be a long season.
Well, Old Man Davis, once again, I completely disagree with you. And in fact, you convinced me just by what you were saying that 6 weeks was enough. I actually was on the fence. And then you brought up Rocky. And you know what? This 6 weeks for Colin Kaepernick, this was his montage. And I'm a believer. I really am. I think 6 weeks is enough. As you mentioned all of the branches of military. You mentioned these other places where the training is more or less it's not as short as 6 weeks, but it's not much further ahead. 6 weeks is a pretty good sample of time for a professional at the level of Colin Kaepernick working with a professional at the level of Kurt Warner to get basics down. Exactly what you said. Basics. He's not going in there to work super complicated stuff. He's going in there to work on his basics. And that is really where the fundamental gap is right now in Colin Kaepernick's game, is the basics. And the basics of pocket passing, dropbacks, and some of his passing mechanics. That's really what it is. I mean, there's no question that he isn't an incredible athlete. And as Kurt Warner said, there's no question that he isn't going to create some incredible plays just with his athleticism, with his legs, and even some of that long ball. No question. But it's those short, small plays in between the big ones. Those are the ones he was working on. And 6 weeks, I believe now, based on everything you said, Old Man Davis, I believe now is more than enough time. So thank you. Thank you for that. Okay, so last question, and then we'll move on. Last question, real quick one. When to be a quarterback and when to be an athlete. This is something that Kurt said Colin needed to decide for himself. So I think that was really interesting. I've never heard anybody word it that way, and I don't think anyone's necessarily said it to Cap that way, that you are going to have to decide when to be a quarterback and when to be an athlete. So, Raymond, I want to bounce it back to you, because Old Man Davis and I are going back and forth a little bit here. I want to bounce it back to you. How do you feel about that? What do you think? I just want to know your general thoughts. It's kind of a free-flowing question here. Quarterback versus athlete, and how that pertains to Colin Kaepernick, and what do you think that means going into the new season?
I think it means really trusting it's a combination of a couple things, and it really starts with the offensive line, because they set the pace for how much time he's got in that pocket. And when you get sacked 52 times in a single season, it's just 16 games, which means you're getting hit multiple times. And that's just the sacks. That's not the hits or the hurries or the pressures. So when I think of this comparison, I think part of it does have to include the offensive line, because there was a lot of times when Colin had to make an extraordinary play because of how quickly the pocket collapsed, or because of how he was ready to go to his reads and then had to quickly make an adjustment because of, blindside pressure or whatever, or a blitz package, whatever the case may be. And I think that he's going to have to really establish, because he's working with new offensive linemen, with the exception of Joe Staley, Marcus Martin, Daniel Kilgore, and Alex Boone. He is working with a sort of a new gel of offensive linemen. And so there does have to be a small readjustment to that relationship and that rapport, so that he can have the trust to say, hey guys, are you going to give me the time I need so that I can make my reads and go through my progressions and get the play done in the fashion that it needs to get done in? Because we know that it's not going to be 100% the whole time. And so when it does break down, is he still going to be able to make those plays? Is he going to look to pass first or decide when to run? That's a really hard one to tell, because we know that at the end of last year, we know that while nobody came out and said it officially, we know that Harbaugh went to Cap and said, look, we only got a couple games left. We're out of this race already. I'm out of this race already. Do what you do best. And then we saw Kaepernick play to his comfort level, where he was running more, where he was, throwing. He wasn't forced to just stay in the pocket and throw. And I think he was just being forced to do that. So now what they're going to do is do a balance. Hey, Cap, we want you to do those things, but we just don't want you to do them as much. We want you to do it during these times. We don't want you to just be pure pocket, which is what was happening last year. It was pure pocket last year, and that just doesn't work. You have to utilize his other skills too. And so that's a combination of coaching, offensive line, and Cap himself too, because you can't predict what's going to happen once the ball gets snapped.
Old Man Davis, do you think that the 49ers use a combination of athleticism and traditional quarterback plays going into the new season?
Lofty goals. 2 key words I say just now. Okay, lofty goals.
Wow.
But you have to start somewhere, and as long as you have a goal to work towards, then you can only hope for the best. Athleticism, yes. I've never said that he doesn't have that. A great athlete. Does he have the ability to play the position? And I already gave you that. A fat question mark.
Right on my face.
So I'm done. And I'm tired of these Colin Kaepernick questions.
Oh, we're going to keep asking them until we start seeing some balls get thrown, buddy.
I want butts!
Now, unless you've been living under a rock, guys, you heard about the comments Jed York made on Monday Morning Quarterback. The article, written by Emily Kaplan, was basically all about Jim Tomsula, and she was getting different perspectives from Balky and York. And the aspect that is getting the most press is Jed York comparing his decision to fire Jim Harbaugh and hire Jim Tomsula to that of the Golden State Warriors brass, Joe LaCobe and Peter Guber. I don't know if is that right? Let me say it one more time. But the aspect that is getting the most press is Jed York's comparing his decision to fire Jim Harbaugh and hire Jim Tomsula to that of the Golden State Warriors brass, Joe LaCobe and Peter Guber's decision to fire Mark Jackson and hire Steve Kerr as their new head coach. The comments comparing Steve Kerr to Jim Tomsula have created quite a stir in the Bay. Gents, I'm going to start this one off. I think part of what has really set people off is the fact that Steve Kerr comes from two of the most storied franchises in basketball history. He was a player on the final Jordan-led Chicago Bulls run from 1996 to 1998, winning 3 championships in a row. He was then traded to the San Antonio Spurs the following year and contributed to them winning a championship in 99. This accomplishment made Kerr one of only 2 players to win 4 straight championships outside of the Boston Celtics' Big 11 championship run. He was also part of the Spurs' 2003 championship team. So he comes from pretty successful basketball franchises, back-to-back.
They did pretty good.
They did pretty good. He did pretty good. Jim Tomsula's career, on the other hand, is not quite as storied. His biggest career highlight was being the head coach of NFL Europe's German team, Rhein-Fire, which won the NFL European Championship. That's pretty much it. Outside of that, his NFL career has all been the Niners. So comparing the two, I think really set a lot of people off because Steve Kerr has had a tremendous amount of success as a player. While he doesn't have, he also doesn't have the head coaching pedigree as Jim Tomsula doesn't have. His success is far deeper, and I think it showed when he actually took over the team just what he learned being a part of two of the all-time great franchises in basketball. So I'm going to sound up to you guys. Old Man Davis, what do you think about this comparison?
We're talking about apples and oranges, talking about guys want to be girls want to be guys, whatever. Okay.
Okay.
What are we talking about here? Talking about basketball and basketball coaches and football coaches.
Hoops versus pigskin.
Guy in the front office, kid, he doesn't know pig shit about pigskin, okay? I don't want to make any comparisons. I'm not going to comment any further about what you just spoke about. All I know is just a bunch of pig shit, okay?
Wow.
The Golden State Warriors are champions for one reason and one reason only. They play like champions.
I think that's it. I think that was the secret.
How does the San Francisco 49ers do it? Pig shit.
Raymond, your thoughts?
The only thing that's really comparable is the fact that you have a assistant coach just transitioning to head coach, and Tomsula, position coach, transferring to a head coach. And that's really the only comparison, because you have a guy who was a 5-time champion as a player and also coached under one of the most successful coaches next to Phil Jackson and Pat Riley. And before that, who was Tomsula coaching under before when he was a position coach? You know, he was retained, per the front office's request when Jim Harbaugh came on and brought in his coaching staff and said, hey, we want you to – Tom Rathman is here to stay and Tomsula is here to stay. You can bring in anybody else you want. It was just – I know York is trying to defend the hiring because he's gotten a lot of flack for it, but at the same time, he just continually digs a ditch with comments like this and really does need to take a look across the bay and see how the Warriors are doing it, because if you want to do it with class and you want to do it with integrity, that's a coaching staff and front office that is doing it and clicking at every single cylinder, because it's starting to get ridiculous. And it was already starting to boil people last year when the stadium deal did not get done in San Francisco, and then they took their deal over to Santa Clara, which was partially not Jed York's fault. That was also the city's fault, Gavin Newsom's fault at that time, not wanting to really work in a timely fashion to get a deal done. And the Yorks And the Niner organization just got impatient with the whole process. But going back to the main point, it's just York is just, he's not putting his money where his mouth is at all. In fact, he just keeps putting more, I guess for lack of a better term, as old man Davis put it, he's just putting more pig in his mouth. And it's just, it's not allowing the Niners organization to kind of have, we've had a quiet offseason player-wise, personnel-wise, coach-wise. However, we have not had a quiet offseason in terms of CEO, president, Mr. York.
I agree. I feel like the main thing Jed York has to do, all he needed to do was shut his mouth and let the players do the playing, the coaches do the coaching, and we'll all see what's what at the end of this season. Just shut your mouth.
No tweeting.
Yeah, put the Twitter gun down. Put the Twitter gun down. That's all you had to do. So I thought it was a bridge too far. I really did. I was just like, we haven't even played a game. We don't even know what's going to happen. So I think that's definitely something that I thought was something that just should have been avoided. I don't think the comparison was necessary. And I think it really stems from Jed York's frustration over how much he's come under fire by 49er fans. I think like Raymond, you touched on that. It's him just defending himself. Really. All right, that's enough. All right, gentlemen, that concludes another edition of the 49er GoldCast. You can find this on rudysolis.com/the GoldCast. I'm your host, Rudy Solis III. You can find me at Twitter and Instagram at Rudy Solis 3RD. Raymond, where can they find you?
They can find me at Ray Solis on Twitter, and on Instagram you can find me as at RealRaySF as well.
You can't miss me. I'm just walking around. When you do, I smile back.
There you go. I'm your host, Rudy Solis III, and with me is my brother, my co-host,
Raymond Solis the first, baby.
and our esteemed co-host,
Old man Davis.
Bam Boom Bing. There we go. We will catch you next time. Same GoldCast time, same GoldCast channel.